Meanwhile, Katherine was growing to maturity, and her beauty, which would one day become so evident, so famous, was becoming evident. The epitaph in John of Gaunt's tomb in Old St. Paul's Cathedral, which was lost during the Great Fire of 1666, described her as extraordinarily beautiful and feminine. Now, it's very unusual to find words like this on a medieval epitaph. The emphasis is usually on virtue and good works, but Henry VII, who placed this epitaph there, could hardly laud the virtue of this rather dubious ancestress, so it's likely that he stressed what people did know about her instead, and that was her beauty. Now, it's long been claimed there are no surviving images of Katherine, or adequate images. The only one we can say for certain is of her is William Dugdale's line drawing of her lost memorial brass in Lincoln Cathedral, done before the depredations of the Civil War, in which that brass was lost. It's a crude line drawing of a woman in a widow's veil at Wimbledon, and in no sense is this a portrait. Yet we may indeed possess something approaching a likeness. An early 15th century illuminated frontispiece to Chaucer's Troilus and Crusade shows the poet reciting his work to the court of Richard II. Almost certainly, John of Gaunt is one of 5 well-dressed, bearded men standing in the front. And at the end of Richard's reign, which is the period in which the manuscript was commissioned, Katherine was his duchess, and as such either first or second lady in the land. Thus, the most prominent, mature female sitting in the front, wearing a blue gown trimmed with ermine, who's clearly a royal lady of some importance, may be her. Much of what we can glean of Katherine's character and interest has to be inferred from the fragmentary sources that have come down to us. We have to look beyond the scathing criticisms of monastic chroniclers shocked by her liaison with the Duke, to the sounder evidence to be found in less sensational records such as John of Gaunt's registers. In fact, most of what we can know or surmise of Katherine Swynford suggests she was a remarkable, attractive, fascinating and sympathetic woman. An early request for a private altar suggests a strong devotional streak instilled in childhood. And by contrast, her long affair with John of Gaunt implores sensuality, allure, charm, loyalty, emotional depth, and perhaps a degree of ambition. But she certainly wasn't the most rapacious of royal mistresses, unlike her contemporary Alice Perrers, the mistress of Edward III. Her love for John was to survive concealment, long separation, social ostracism and public vilification, and that, to me, argues that it was deep and true. Her admirable discretion and tact helped smooth the path of the lovers, and when tragedy and loss struck, she had sufficient wisdom and strength of character to survive with dignity. A warm and kindly heart may be evident in Katherine's lasting love for John and in her apparent affection for children, her own, and all those who came into her orbit. She was clearly good with the young, and she had, it seems, an innate sensitivity that made it possible for her to create unity from disparity. Hence the successful bonding of the heirs of Lancaster with her Swynfords, her Beaufort children by John of Gaunt, and the young Chaucers, bonds that surmounted the taboos created by rank, adultery, death, and illegitimacy. Much of this was doubtful due to the powerful influence of the Duke, but I think Katherine has to take her share of the credit for it. Katherine was widowed at the early age of 21 in 1371, when Sir Hugh Swynford died whilst on a campaign with the Duke in the south of France. John of Gaunt had then just remarried for political reasons, his bride being Constance of Castile, through whom he was to claim the crown of Castile, one of the Spanish kingdoms. Although Constance was young and beautiful, the marriage never had a chance to succeed, because it would appear that when Katherine, a destitute widow, appealed to the Duke, her overlord, for help, he succumbed to her allure and made her his mistress, probably in the spring of 1372. He probably hadn't seen Katherine for about 3 years, and maturity and vulnerability may have made her even more appealing to him. She must have had, too, those indefinable qualities we call charm and sex appeal. Was it her fair A-nota beauty that appealed to him? Did it remind him of the full feminine visage of his mother, Queen Philippa, or the white, blonde, rounded loveliness of his first wife, Blanche, or even of his first mistress, another A-nota, Marie de Saint-Hilaire, whom he'd enjoyed when he was in his teens? If these are indicative of John's taste in women, then the theory that Catherine herself was fair and voluptuous sounds even more credible. Certainly for John, Catherine's extraordinary beauty eclipsed the dark charms of Constance. But even if the first attraction was physical, the enduring nature of his love for her suggests that this affair was rooted in far more than beauty and sex, for Catherine was intelligent, cultivated and accomplished, and she could thus share in the Duke's sophisticated interests. Theirs must have been what Shakespeare later called a marriage of true minds. Much of what Catherine saw in John is obvious. He was royal, authoritative and powerful, a heady and sexy combination, especially combined with aristocratic good looks, tall, lean and muscular physique, a cultivated mind and an attractive personality. More than that, John of Gaunt was a man who knew about love and had been brought up to treat women chivalrously and with respect. Now, John of Gaunt is known to most people largely through his very brief appearance in Shakespeare's Richard II as time-honoured Lancaster, in which he makes a famously patriotic speech about the kingdom he has served for so long. This royal throne of kings, this sceptred isle, this earth of majesty, this seat of Mars, this blessed plot, this realm, this earth, this England, this nurse, this teeming womb of royal kings. But this is not the sum of the man, far from it, for these sentiments are unlikely to inform the thinking of the real John of Gaunt, who was a remarkable and complex character, entirely undeserving of the poor reputation that's been heaped upon him for centuries by historians and other writers who mostly follow the calumnies of hostile chroniclers or accepted Sir John Fortescue's 15th century view of John as the overmighty subject par excellence. For them, he was an unscrupulous and immoral tyrant. It wasn't until 1904, with the appearance of Sidney Armitage Smith's monumental biography, that a fairer and more considered view of John of Gaunt emerged. For better or worse, Gaunt made a tremendous impact on the history of England. Even today, oral traditions, myths and legends survive in what were called the Lancastrian countries. His name is writ large in the annals of the age of chivalry. He was, effectively, the greatest English nobleman of his time, and he was tremendously wealthy. If I say that in 14th century terms, his income averaged around £12,000 a year, and the next nobleman down the scale got about 4,000, that will give you an idea of just how rich he was. Even as a young man, John of Gaunt was commanding in appearance. In the Book of the Duchess, Chaucer gives us a tantalising glimpse of him at the age of 28, describing him as a splendidly looking knight of noble stature with a stately manner. The only other surviving description of John is to be found in the pages of Fernão Lopes's Portuguese chronicle, and that was based on the reminiscences of people who'd known John in later life. According to this, he was vigorous and healthy, as befitted a warrior who played a prominent part in no less than a dozen military and naval campaigns, and had high majestic features and piercing eyes. He was reserved and dignified in character, a proud man who was ever conscious of the gravitas of his high estate. Courteous and charming, he spoke well, very measured, temperately, with good judgment, being self-controlled and good-humoured. Skilled in logic and rhetoric, he was an accomplished orator and powerful at debating. A great traditionalist, the Duke was also conventional in his tastes and outlook and reactionary in his views. Rarely did he abuse his power. Instead, he was liberal, generous, prudent, thoughtful, and above all, possessed of a strong sense of honour and firm principles. He rarely shirked his obligations or responsibilities, nor failed in his duty. For him, the laws of chivalry were sacrosanct, and he tried all his life to remain true to his knightly oath, whilst modestly protesting, "I am no great knight myself." But the Duke did not take kindly to criticism or to being contradicted. When provoked, he was quick to explode with anger or act on impulse, being jealous of honour, sudden and quick in quarrel. He was capable of using great harsh words in Parliament and could be peremptory when giving orders. "Make sure this is done in such a manner, understanding that if it is disrupted, we would not wish to impute the blame to you, and do not neglect this as you wish to avoid upsetting us." His grand manner often made him appear haughty, autocratic, aloof, and even intimidating, and that did not endear him to envious contemporaries, and it alienated a number of his fellow nobles. But he cared little for that. Public opinion was rarely a concern for him. Because of his wealth and power, he had no need to court favour or heed resentment. Chaucer, however, found John to be a wonder and well-faring knight, who was so treatable, right wonder skilful and reasonable, that he put the poet at his ease, and got me acquaint with him.